Posing for a photo.
Ha. Hey, welcome to today's episode of Peak Prosper Expert Interviews. I'm your host, Scott, and I'm joined by Tommy Sobel, right? Tommy Sobel from
My mom sometimes says Sobel. It's Sobel. She sometimes says Sobel when she's like trying to get a reservation at a fancy Italian restaurant. She's like Connie Sobel, but
Sobel. I'm super stoked for today's conversation. We're going to be talking about digital habits and Brick and everything that Tommy does professionally. Tommy, can you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a bit about your amazing and inspiring movement that you've started?
yes, I can. And first, thank you so much for having me. So great to be in this group and to have been connected with you, and everything that you're doing. I just think is so awesome. It resonates so much with me. So yeah, I'm just so glad to be here. So thanks for putting this together. And it's been such a joy. Like, you're so organized and on top of it, and you think one step ahead. And most people don't do that. So it's just such a relief to be able to speak with you here. I really feel supported, and that we can like do whatever we want, and it'll be great. So thank you.
Thanks, Tommy. Well, hey, for those that might tune into today's show, can you tell us a little bit about Brick and how you got into helping people reclaim their relationship with their screens, of all things?
Totally. Yeah. So basically, I was a film executive. I worked at DreamWorks Studios, and I was actually Steven Spielberg's assistant for like 5 years. And at one point, he promoted me to be a junior executive at the company in this new department, to be like the new media guy. And so my job was to explore what Steven Spielberg is going to do on Snapchat or on Instagram or YouTube or Facebook. And so I had to do a ton of work on my phone, and it got to a point to where it was creating a lot of issues with my mental health, where I was on it for 10 hours a day and was checking my phone first thing in the morning and last thing at night, and while driving to work, and waking up in the middle of the night just to check it for no apparent reason. And so if anybody was a phone addict, it was me. And I felt like no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't catch up with everything. There was just too much to do, and too many profiles to check out, or platforms to try, and videos to watch. And I really wanted to prove myself. I wanted to do a great job for my boss, and I wanted to prove that I could do this job. And it was making me anxious and irritable, and like I was always behind and running out of time.
Hmm.
And so the good news, luckily, I have a background in neuroscience, and I worked on neuroscience studies with PhDs at UCLA and Duke University for a number of years, and so before the film industry. And so I understood the basics about how the brain worked, and how habits are formed, and how habits can be reformed, behavioral rehabilitation. And so I started to apply just some basic rudimentary practices from my neuroscience background on myself, and it started working. And so I started sharing it. I started to feel more space and time and more confident. And so I started sharing it with a few other people as well, and they resonated with it too. And so I came up with this idea, which was to turn your phone into a brick, put your phone down for an hour a day, and do something that you love in the real world. And so for me, that was reading. My number one favorite thing to do in the world is read. And I've got this bookshelf in my bedroom with like 150 books on it, and I hadn't read a single one in like 5 years. And so, cause I was instead on in my bed, like swiping and scrolling. And so when I started turning my phone into a brick for an hour a day, my life just kind of opened up, and I started to feel more in control of my phone when I was on it. And I was single at the time, and I felt like I could be more present on these dates that I was going on. And it's what I now know as what's called a keystone behavior. So that one behavior change created a cascade of other positive behaviors. And so because I had that hour at night, I started sleeping better. And then I started waking up earlier, feeling more well rested, and with more oomph. And so then I started having the time to like make breakfast in the morning, instead of being on my phone and like rushing and then not making breakfast on the way to work. And then I had even more time and I started going to the gym beforehand. So it just created this cascade of a much better life and time. And so that concept, that basically like the daily challenge of turn your phone into a brick, is why my company is called Brick, my community. And that concept just kind of blew up into a community of people who were seeking that, who wanted the permission to get off the grid for themselves and other people in the natural world. And so 4 years ago, I started to throw phone-free events and retreats, or it kind of evolved into retreats where, like, instead of being phone-free for like a dinner party, it was like, let's go a whole weekend in Joshua Tree. And like, I brought
So
55
cool.
people. Yeah, it was so awesome. And let's see what a whole weekend experience is of creating a phone-free community. And that was just such a game changer and so life-changing for me and for everyone else that attended. And so I was doing that for a number of years. And over the period of the last 4 years, I got so inspired by this process that I left my job at DreamWorks and started figuring out how I could support people even better. I went from being on my phone for like 10 hours a day down to an average of 1 hour a day. And I went from being this anxious, overwhelmed underachiever who like couldn't catch a break with, creatively unfulfilled, to creating my own business with my own, creating in a new industry. I'm literally the first digital habits coach, at least according to Google, and making more money than I ever had in my life, like by far. I made like, 50K in sales in April and collected 40K in May, and I'm having way more time off and taking way more vacations than I ever have before. And so basically I went from having to sacrifice either making a living or having a great life to teaching to having both, and that's now the skill that I teach. So yeah, that's basically my story.
Tommy, I think we just connected. Was it a week ago, man?
Yeah.
We just connected a week ago and we really hit it off. And the first message you sent me was that you just spent the last week or so off grid, disconnected, and you were working on a book project. Can you tell us a little bit about this recent project that you've undertaken and a little bit about what your book is about?
Yeah, definitely. So I developed a program that's called the Phone Smart program. And it's basically to help overwhelmed smartphone owners reclaim 100 plus productive hours a month. And this is something that I've been doing for a few years now with entrepreneurs and founders and business owners who just like really need to make the most out of their time. But I've been working one-on-one with them. And so this book is my guidebook for that. So that basically anybody around the world can have this program, can have all of the tools and techniques that I teach one-on-one in a much more accessible way. And so it's called, it's going to be, I haven't actually announced it, but it's the Phone Smart book, how to reclaim, 100 plus productive hours each month and say no to distractions so that you can enjoy more time off and more of your life. And so that's been going really great. My inspiration zone is being alone in nature. And so I went to a cabin in Big Bear by myself for a week. And in the first 2 days, I had written the entire rough draft of the book. And that was incredible. I have certain rules and parameters, and I basically had to use like everything that I have learned to create this, for this huge, gigantic task that can often be overwhelming and feel like, eating an elephant. But yeah, so I did that twice over the last few months, and now I'm finally getting feedback on the book and starting to think about marketing it, and so it's super exciting.
So you went off grid for a couple of days in this cabin in Big Bear, and you literally wrote an entire draft for your book in 2 days. I'm curious about what kind of habits and rituals you were following during what I call that deep work time, where you're just really focused on one big project. And I can't speak for you, but when I go to that space, I have to turn everything off. So what did you implement that empowered you with the space in your mind so that you could channel all of your energy to this one big project?
I mean, you just said like what might be the most important aspect of it is that it's about putting blinders on and setting an intention to focus on the most important thing for a consistent period of time. And you know, the average person checks their phone about 100 times a day. And if you do the math on that, if you check your phone 100 times a day and you sleep for 8 hours a night, that leaves about 16 hours that you're awake each day, right? So if you check your phone 100 times a day in those 16 hours, you're checking your phone 16 times an hour. Wait, 100?
A lot.
Oh, I've done this math before. You're checking your phone a lot. Basically once out of every 6 minutes, I did the math. So you're checking your phone on average every 6 minutes. And what we know about focus and flow state, and I know you know a lot about this too, is that it requires at a minimum 20 minutes of undistracted focus for you to actually reach your highest level productivity to get into that flow state. And so for me, living my regular life, you know, having phone calls or texts or, you know, the dog barking, all those distractions add up, and they add up to inefficiencies. And I probably have spent weeks or months trying to, you know, could have spent weeks or months like trying to write this book. And so to collapse time, it was completely removing all the potential distractions, going into a place where I had all of my needs met. I brought all my food. I didn't need to go anywhere. And, you know, there's more to it, but, you know, that's the most important thing. I think that I'll say there's two other main components to it that really work for me. Number one is using Freedom. I don't know if you're familiar with Freedom, but it's an app that was, oh, it's amazing. So it was designed before smartphones even existed. And it's like the OG app blocking software. So I think it was first developed for authors and screenwriters who didn't want to get sidetracked by checking, you know, other websites while they were writing on their computer. And so what it does is it blocks all potentially distracting websites, and you can actually have it block anything you choose. You can choose which apps or websites that you can't check for a certain period of time, and it's device wide. So like when I start a Freedom session, it blocks email on my phone as well if I press it on my laptop. And so what you can do with what I did over that time is I scheduled it, and I currently still do this as well. So if I'm purposefully going to be in my book writing mode or my content creation mode, I schedule ahead of time a Freedom session so that I know that it's impossible for me to check Instagram. It's impossible for me to check email or stocks or any of the things that are potentially distracting me. So Freedom is super important because it basically puts those blinders, those guardrails on you. And when you create those limits, when you make it impossible to do the wrong thing, your and it's, you know, it's what behavioral scientists call environmental design. When you design your environment to make it impossible for you to do the wrong thing, something special happens where you actually don't even, your subconscious mind doesn't even try to mess with you. It doesn't even try to be like, should I just check real quick? Like, what if something important came in? Like, I know I texted someone, like, what if it's an important client? Like, the subconscious mind loves to just come up with distractions because focuses can be uncomfortable. Writing a book is extremely uncomfortable. And so by having Freedom on and literally being like, I can't check texts or email, even if I wanted to, I'm able to be more present in that state. So that's one thing that has been super helpful for me. The second thing is designing a day with reward-rich goals. So every day I would have like my sheet of paper with like a checklist of everything that I actually have one here now, I think. Yeah, so basically here's a new checklist that I just made, you know, super analog, low key. But the whole idea is every day you want to have your goal. So right now it's like reviewing a chapter of my book is the goal for the day. This is for my phase 3. It's like reviewing the feedback. And then, so if I accomplish that goal, it's not just that's it. And now I think about the next day's tasks. It's like I have a specific reward planned. And so when I was writing the book, I stayed at this cabin in Big Bear that had a jacuzzi. and jacuzziing is like my favorite thing. And so I knew that the moment I accomplished my task, that hot jacuzzi was waiting for me with me and my like Topo Chico or whatever, however else I wanted to celebrate, like a sparkling drink. And that was how I was going to reward myself. And so setting reward rich goals is really important because you have something to look forward to and you're celebrating your success. The more you celebrate your success, the more you enjoy it. And the more that you basically that you attract more success, instead of it just being focused on the problem and the challenge and the pressure of like trying to struggle through, the work.
Yeah, those 2 points that you just noted are brilliant. I think that the first one, the Freedom app, which blocks all the distracting websites and prevents us from just habitually or addictively checking our text messages or the thing that rings and dings, removes this need to rely purely on willpower to stay focused on what we're trying to get done. And then secondly, as high performers, we just forget to reward ourselves after pushing the limits of what's possible in our lives or our business. And it's so easy to just jump to the next thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, man, totally.
You know what I mean?
So important. Yeah, and like there's something really nice that you said there, that we often rely on willpower. Like we think that having discipline or having great focus or productivity or being a top performer or a high achiever is all about that grit and that discipline and that willpower. And yeah, that's a part of it, but that's discounting a whole other side, which is actually much easier to do, which is designing our environment for success. So that's where making the desired habit easy and attractive and visible and fun, which is what James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits. If you're familiar with that, it's amazing, amazing book. And then making the undesired habit difficult or painful or straight up impossible, then you're basically designing your life so that you naturally do the things that you want to do.
So Tommy, if somebody wants to reprogram their digital habits, where would you suggest they start?
I would say that the first thing to do is, self-awareness is where you want to start. And so, if you first need to know where you're at to know where you want to go. And I have this free quiz on our website where you can understand what your conscious control is over your phone. So conscious control is what I define as your ability to say no to your phone, your ability to say no to unwanted habits, to saying no when you're driving. Say no to your phone when you're driving, or when you're at the dinner table with your family, or when you're in a meeting that is important to your boss, but isn't necessarily exciting to you. So most of us have low conscious control because we don't want to check our phone while driving. We don't want to check our phone first thing in the morning. We want to wake up and meditate, or we want to wake up and exercise. And we've been telling ourselves we want to do that for years, but still we find ourselves doing this thing we don't want to do, which is checking our phone first thing, or in situations where it's dangerous, or getting in the way of our relationships. And so that indicates low conscious control. You would find out what your specific score is if you took the quiz on our website. That's a really great way to figure out if you've got strong conscious control and you're in control of most of your behaviors, or if your phone and your habits are getting in the way and you have a dysfunctional relationship with it.
Yeah, I went through part of that quiz on your website, and there's some really brilliant questions. I think it asks you to honestly rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 4 on a variety of questions. For example, do you find yourself habitually checking your text messages throughout the day multiple times? And it really brought some stuff to awareness that's going on in my own life and where I'm wasting some time for sure, man.
Yeah. What came up for you?
For me, I mean, I realized that I check my text messages more than about 2 times per day, which is way too much for me as far as I'm concerned. I don't need text messaging as a primary channel of communication. Once a day or once every couple of days is more than enough. What also came up for me is that I have this habit, like many of us, to just bring my phone everywhere with me. If I
Mm-hmm.
leave my office, I bring my phone with me to the kitchen. If I am going to a workout, I'll bring my phone with me. If I'm going out to dinner with my wife, I'll bring my phone. But I have started to just leave the phone in the car, or sometimes just leave it in my office, because it doesn't have to come with me everywhere. I call it a digital pacifier for me, like
Yeah,
an
seriously.
adult pacifier. And I've I've also, more than anything, come to realize we're more connected than ever before, like ever
Mm-hmm.
before in the history of humanity. But I also feel like we're more disconnected than ever. And what I mean by that is we're more disconnected from nature and the outdoors and who we are just as natural humans in our natural state. And we talked a little bit about this a couple days ago when we'd first connected, but I'm curious to hear how your relationship as technology has changed, has influenced the quality of the time that you spend in the outdoors and the impact that that has on your life.
Mm-hmm. I love that question, and I also love what you were talking about before you asked the question too. So I'd love to touch on both. Um, there's something in my program that I call the phone smart habits, where there are 15 habits where basically if you have these habits, then you have healthy digital habits, and even if you just have a couple of them, it can really like boost your time and energy and productivity in a given day. And uh, what you talked about for you is with text messaging, how that's kind of an app that you might find yourself checking more often than you would like. I mean, it's pretty incredible that you only check your phone twice a day for texts. Like, I've never even heard of that before. So if you're, I would love to hear from you. Have you created a life where you can just check text messages once every other day? Like, that is goals. Absolutely. But if you are personally, for you, in a place where you're checking it twice a day and you want to be checking it every other day, um, one of the things that's helped me is uh, first of all, I have this. Not all apps are created equal, right?
Mm.
Like, some apps you can use purely for a utilitarian reason. They're purely intentional, and you don't waste time on them. Like, no one has ever accidentally wasted time on Google Maps. Like, you put in the destination, you get to where you're going, and you're out of it. Like, no one's ever been like, damn, I would have been on time, but like I got
I wish
sidetracked
I
on
wasn't
Google Maps.
scrolling around on the map.
Yeah, exactly. Like, no one's ever done that, I don't think. So, but if it was like Instagram or the news or Twitter, like, it's a completely different story. So there's only a certain number of apps that are designed specifically to get you to spend more time on them, and they're part of the attention economy. And this is talked about a lot in the documentary, The Social Dilemma, if any of you guys have seen it. But I like to call these the endless apps. And endless is an acronym which stands for email, news, dating. The L stands for leisure, so that's like mobile games. And then the second E is entertainment, so that could be like YouTube or Netflix. And then the first S is social media. And then the second S, depending on who you are, is stocks or shopping.
Mm.
So typically, uh, we have our endless app of choice, or
What's your final ask? I'm a stock guy.
I'm a stock guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
My
spend much
girlfriend's the
time
shopper.
shopping.
Yeah, my girlfriend's the shopper. I'm the stock guy, checking, Coinbase every other moment. So we all have our endless app, that, like, our drug of choice or our drink of choice. We all have our endless app that, we kind of have these compulsions or are impulsive about. Like, for me, back in the day when I was really struggling with this, it was email. I
Mm.
would wake up in the middle of the night just to check email. I probably checked email 500 times a day, like, not even joking. And so for you, for those of you watching this, like, maybe it's Instagram, maybe it's dating apps, maybe it's YouTube. I had a client who, like, couldn't go to sleep without, like, playing YouTube videos at night. And so either way, these apps are all designed to get you to spend as much time on them as possible. And so one of the phone smart habits is to schedule to only check your endless apps at pre-scheduled times. So I don't know if this is relevant for you or if this is something that you already do, Scott, but what's worked really well for me is making sure that I would only check email at predetermined times. And for me, for a while, it was like, I'm only going to check email 5 times a day. I'll check it at 9 a.m., noon, 3 p.m., and maybe like 5 p.m., and then like at 7 p.m. before I have dinner. And so if I have that time blocked in my calendar, and I can talk about time blocking as well, because it's such a game changer. But if you have your calendar scheduled with checking text messages, and you know exactly when you're going to do that on your pace, that your ideal pace of every other day at 9 a.m. or something, then because you have that set, it makes it much easier for you to say no in the other times of day when you don't want to check it. Because it's like, you know what? I've already decided I'm going to be checking my text messages tomorrow morning. I don't need to check it right now. So creating that plan and that strategy is can kind of take it off your plate. So you're not making the decision in the moment, like, am I going to check it now or am I going to check it in half an hour? You've already made the decision for yourself when you're in this cold state, when your rational mind is in control, so that when you're in this hot state and your emotional mind is in control, or maybe you're stressed out or flustered or bored, you're not susceptible to doing something that you don't want to do. So that's one of them. And then I don't remember what the other one was, but basically
we were talking about the impact of the outdoors was the second point. And my question for you was, I mean, our access to technology has transformed so radically and so quickly. And I'm curious how technology has changed your relationship with nature in the outdoors, and how time in the outdoors is still having such a positive impact on you and your ability to tap into this peak state where you can go write a book in 2 days.
Yeah, I mean, nature, we live in 3 worlds today, right? And we've got the outer world, which is the natural world. And other people, relationships, the ocean is over here. Then we have our inner world, right? Which is like our feelings, our emotions, and our hopes and dreams. And then we have the digital world. And the digital world is, self-evident. That's, where we have our social media followers, and it's also where we have our investments. And, that's all in the digital world, and our photos. And none of those worlds are better than the others. But the digital world is just so stimulating. It's designed, and it's the newest one, right? The inner worlds and outer worlds have existed for a while, but the digital world was created to get as much of us, our attention as possible. And so it's just so stimulating that we end up spending an incredible amount of time on it, especially in a world where we have a pandemic and we're kind of, isolated. And so what I've found is so necessary for me, way more than ever, is to make sure that I am prioritizing my time in my inner world and in my outer worlds. Otherwise, the digital world will just sap up all the time and energy. And so it's even more essential than ever for me to make sure that I'm carving out enough time, meditating in the morning, or like journaling, or doing the things that I need to like be grounded inside my own mind and my mindset. And then also going out into nature, being fully present in it, and realizing, the expansiveness and the infinity that surrounds us. Just looking up at the starry sky can like really put everything, all of my worries and fears into perspective, like how small we really are. So that's, I guess, like one way to answer that. The other answer is, I think that by having a consistent pace of digital detoxes, at least like once a week, or at least once a month, I would say, but ideally once a week, of taking 24 hours off the grid in the real world, is one of those gifts that just never stops giving. And every time I do it, whether it's just spending a Saturday going to a park or going on a walk with my girlfriend, and whatever it is, or playing some games, beach volleyball on the beach, or going surfing without my phone, time just moves differently. And there's just more depth and presence. And because we're removing ourselves from that stimulation, from that hyper stimulation, I end up finding myself way more creative. And the unstimulated mind is the creative mind. And so a lot of insights and discoveries come up when I'm in nature and when I'm in the natural world that don't come up otherwise. And if I don't carve out that time, I'm truly missing out on insights and what the world has to offer. So I make it a priority as much as possible to go outside at minimum just for like a walk for sunset each day. That's like the daily habit. And then I chunk up those habits into bigger and bigger chunks. So like I've got my daily outdoors habit, and then I have my weekly habit of ideally spending 24 hours, which is usually Saturday, off the grid. And then I have more of a longer term habit where I want to spend at least a week completely off the grid, traveling or going somewhere in nature. And so that's what I did back in March in Sayulita. I went with a couple of friends on a surf trip. That's what we're going to be doing coming up in October in Guatemala. We're actually curating an event, curating and creating an event for others so that they don't need to design it themselves, but we're creating permission and the ability for them to get off the grid and do something that they deserve, but really haven't been able to grant themselves. And so, yeah, it's like the most important thing, I think.
I'm super excited to hear more about Guatemala in just a couple of minutes, but you said something that really resonated with me, and that was about digital detoxing. And it brings me back to something I did, I think it was about 2 years ago. I challenged myself to go 7 days with my phone completely turned off while still interacting with all my friends and family and just the world at large. And if nobody has tried that, even 2 days, boy, it is a challenging experience. And for me, it just frustrated a lot of my friends and family, but it gave me a perspective of what life was like before we had smartphones in our hands. And I'd just like to hear a little bit more from you about how somebody might implement a routine of digital detoxing into their rhythm when it's not something that they're used to. I mean, that can be an uncomfortable thing for somebody to do, for someone to put down the digital pacifier that I call it and leave it off in their office for a day.
Yeah, it can be very difficult. And so I found that there's 5 components that can make it super easy and super rewarding so that you actually enjoy the experience and then want to do it again, and you reap all the rewards of it. And it doesn't end up being something that like adds to your stress. Because the truth is, when we're stressed out, our cortisol levels rise, our stress hormone, and that actually makes us more, our fight flight gets activated, and that makes us more susceptible to our phones, or more susceptible to our bad habits and the things that we don't want to do. So the whole idea is meant to actually be stimulating in the real world, but actually be calming and relaxing. And so there's a right way to do it, but there's an easy way to do it and a hard way to do it. And so to make it easier for anyone who's never really like done a digital detox before, there's a few things that you want to do. One is, and this is probably the most important one, is that you want to make a plan. So on your time off, you don't want to just have a regular day with nothing planned and then wake up and then be like, holy shit, I can't reach out to anybody. I've got nothing to do. And then now you're bored and stressed, and then you're like, wish you were on your phone. That's like defeating the whole purpose. And so what you want to do is planning amazing, engaging activities, adventures, things that you love for their own sake. And you just plan ahead. So like maybe you want to hang out with a friend, maybe you want to go to the beach, maybe you want to go to a park or a museum or something. And you do what we used to do, back in the 90s, and you just plan ahead of time. And you're like, hey dude, I'll see you at 10, or, let's meet here. and you just got to be there. And so making a plan is really important. And because it's a form of dopamine detox, because you're not getting the dopamine that you're typically getting from your phone, it's really helpful. It makes it easier for you to fill yourself with healthier forms of dopamine in the real world. So that's why you want to be doing things that you love, making that a day full of rewards. Like, have an amazing meal, go to a restaurant that excites you, like do something arousing and exciting so that you don't even remember that you're not on your phone that day. So that's the most important thing. I think that it's also really nice to have a couple objects with you to make it easier. One being an alarm clock. So because you're not going to be on your phone, most of us use our phone as our alarm clock. And so I have this $10 alarm clock that I bought on Amazon. It's battery powered. The alarm is not super annoying. And I use that so that I can wake up with it and charge my phone in the other room and truly feel like I don't need to check my phone at all. So having the alarm clock helps. Also, just having a notebook and pen for when ideas come to you, like you're probably going to get insights that have been waiting to come to you, but haven't arrived because you've been, the inputs have been nonstop. So it's only after you give yourself the space to put all the inputs on hold and digest everything that you've been experiencing in your life to have new ideas. I mean, that's what creativity is, right? It's like taking two things that don't have that aren't related and relating them through a third thing, a new thing, and that's what an idea is. So it's like, I've thrown dinner parties before and I brought people together, but I've never thrown a phone-free dinner party. Like, let's do that. That's a new idea. That's what Brick basically
was.
The
idea, man. I know what I'm doing in the next week or two.
Yeah, there we go. And so having a notebook and a pen, and then having a camera, because you don't want to be like, oh, this is such a great view or something, I wish I had my phone again. Like, you want to be creating a situation where you have everything you need. If you're going to be driving somewhere, print out a map. Like, you can think ahead and then make it the most amazing time ever. So with those components, and really just setting the intention to have a great time using the power of intention, it's great. I think the last thing is that maybe like do it with other people. Like, don't do it alone. Are there other people like you who are down to take the challenge to digital detox for a Saturday or something? And you make it fun, and you can be kind of accountability partners together. And if you're feeling like slipping or doing something that you didn't agree to, like, they can help keep you honest, and vice versa, and it makes it more fun.
Tommy, you're curating an experience in Guatemala that's it sounds very much like it's going to be bringing together everything that we've talked about today. Can you tell us a little bit about that event and where it is? I think it's at an active volcano on an island in Guatemala. You have to take a boat to get to it. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So it's called BRICS Guatemala Leadership Adventure. And we are bringing together founders, leaders, entrepreneurs, business owners, or high-level executives. I like to say, it's really just humble high achievers is what I'm looking for. So people who, number one, have been working really hard for a long time, and they just had an insane year. I know I did, and they probably had to pivot or change their business or make big sacrifices with their business because of the last year. And so they didn't necessarily take the time off or the vacation that they had planned or that they deserved. And so, number one, this trip is going to be an absolutely off the beaten path vacation for these people who really truly haven't had that opportunity yet. And so that's the first component. It's happening from October 3rd to October 10th. So 8 days, 7 nights in Guatemala. We're going to be staying in these beautiful villas. Half of the trip will be in this colonial city of Antigua. And then the second half on this, like, arguably most beautiful lake in the world, Lake Atitlan, literally staying secluded on our own. It's only going to be us on the lake.
So cool.
And I've hired the #1 adventure guide in all of Latin America to lead the trip, the adventure part of the trip. So we are going to be scaling to the top of a live active volcano. We're going to be glamping there, sleeping there. Everything's going to be provided for us. And we're actually going to be able to enjoy a meal and an experience overlooking another volcano that will be erupting right before our eyes. In fact, people that have been on this trip before, will be walking over crevices of hot lava, and they even brought hot dogs, and like we're able to cook lava dogs like on the way up the volcano.
Lava
and
dogs.
So lava dogs, yeah. And so there's a lot of being in that this. So I hired this guy, Leon. He has been leading adventure trips in 32 different countries over the last 16 years. And he also owns a bunch of restaurants all over Latin America, and they're all phone free. So when I met him, we vibed super hard. And I asked him, I was like, if you could throw a brick retreat anywhere in the world, where would it be? And he said Guatemala, because Americans think it's super dangerous, and it's not. And most of them have never been there. And it has some of the most incredible culture and food and natural untapped vistas that if they were in the United States, you wouldn't be able to get a mile, close up to. But because it's in Latin America, there's like no rules, and we can go like right up front and center into these places. And so because he lived there for over a year and is just an amazing guy, we have access to locations and activities that no tourist has access to. And so he's curated this trip for us where we can have this mostly off the grid experience. We will have essential phone use, and essential work will be an option for people who need that. But to have this mostly off the grid experience in the natural world. And then in addition to that, I'm going to be leading a bunch of workshops for us to get more clarity on our visions and what kind of life do we want to lead, and how can we show up and be a more fully embodied leader, to be that 7-figure or 8-figure CEO that we were born to be, and getting clarity on that vision. And then what's been holding us back, what imposter syndrome or subconscious self-sabotage or inner obstacles have been getting in the way or could get in the way, preventing us from taking risks or like really showing up fully for our teams or our employees or our partners in our families. And so I'm so excited for everything that kind of like the inner work component to it that I'll be leading as like the host of the retreat. And yeah, so it's going to be absolutely incredible. We only have 6 spots left. It's a really small retreat. We used to do these for like 50 plus people. This one is maxed out at 20. Really want it to be intimate and for people to come away with people that they can rely on and have peer accountability and support for the rest of their life. I went to a retreat in Tulum with my coach back in March, and that was a retreat exclusively for other coaches. And it was the first time that I've basically been doing this on my own, feeling like a solopreneur, like figuring it all out for so long. And to finally, for the first time, like be surrounded by people just like me who have the same challenges and obstacles and have overcome the same challenges and obstacles or I've overcome obstacles that they're, currently going through. And so I have the ability to share my knowledge and my experience with them and feel good about that. Like those are the people that I have only spent a week with total in my life. And they're the ones that I feel like are supporting me the most right now. They're the ones that are reading my book and giving me feedback. And I know that I can rely on them forever, probably. And so that's how I'm designing this trip too, so that people can, it's not for everybody. It's just for those humble high achievers who have an adventurous side and, are also devoted to self-mastery and want to be the best version of themselves and reach their peak potential. So, if you or anybody in your community wants to know more about that, I think I've got links I could share, but.
Yeah, I'll put some links in the comments below today's show. But if somebody that's listening right now wants to go learn more about that, where can people find you? Where can they learn more about Brick and what you're building?
Yeah, so my website is gobricknow.com, just all spelled out as if it's one word. If you go to gobricknow.com, then you'll be able to take that free quiz that I talked about to figure out your conscious control score, to figure out if your phone's smart. That also will have the details. You'll be able to click to find details about the Guatemala trip and decide if it's right for you and apply. We do only have 6 spots left. So I would say that if you were super interested, I would apply now because there is a review process. The application just allows me to get to know you better and for me to make sure that, you know, I can make this the best trip ever for you, because I'm truly dedicated to make this the best trip of everyone's life who attends. And you can also join the community too and just sign up for, you know, updates. And, you know, I release a bunch of tips and tricks and techniques like time blocking and more phone smart habits via email and on my YouTube channel. So
Cool.
any of those.
Awesome. Hey, Tommy, thank you so much for taking the time today to do this show with me. I'm so stoked we connected.
Me too, man. Yeah, this has been super fun. I'm excited
Peace,
for it.
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.